to another episode of the Leadership Lens by AdTech, where we attempt to bring you the latest visions, strategies, and ideas from industry leaders across the globe. Today, we have with us Babita Baruah, who's the Managing Partner India for WPP's GTB. Babita has spent 24 years in advertising with Wunderman Thompson, which is the erstwhile JWT India. She's worked with the agency's Kolkata, Mumbai, and Delhi offices on a diverse portfolio from FMCG, finance, tech, and besides that, being in the APAC and global JWT network teams on Unilever, Nestle, and Nokia. Her last role prior to GTB was the head of PO1, which is an independent business unit managing PepsiCo for JWT India. Babita is actively involved in mentoring women and students. She's a well-known speaker in the AdTech community and on various other forums. She's initiated programs at the workplace as well as spoken in industry forums on how women can be encouraged to work and how productivity can grow exponentially with diversity and gender balance. Great to have you with us, Babita. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Shiny. You've always been very, very generous with your introduction, and this is yet another very generous introduction. So hello again to you.
You deserve it, absolutely, no doubt about it.
Thank you, and a hello to all the people who are viewing this from a very cold and wintry Gurgaon morning.
So without much ado, let's start with the first question. And Babita, something that I've been asking a lot of people is that we've been hearing about the opportunities and challenges of working from home in this past year. You and I are fortunate to do that. Some people aren't, but I know that as a leader of one of the largest marketing agencies, what has been the experience like for you as a leader to lead a team of people who are working from home? I'm sure it's not easy, but what's it been like?
Thank you, Shiny. It's been actually a potent mix, I would say, a potent mix of challenges, opportunities, and new learnings. I must admit, in March 2020, it was around the 16th of March when we all went to manage remote working, work from home, thinking that it was about a few weeks, and in the initial days, whatever we did, it was more about keeping the team connected, keeping the team motivated, understanding any challenge of this new way of working, setting up equipment, etc., etc. We also worked out plans to continue work the same way that we would have done in our workplace, except that this was remote, right? But over time, I think what we understood was that it cannot be a duplication of a regular workday, because in lockdown, and a lockdown which has been because of a pandemic of this proportion, teams had to manage literally food on the table, the kitchen, the cleaning, get used to online schooling, be very, very careful about even stepping out for groceries, etc., and manage work at the same time. So over time, we really calibrated our day to make room for people to juggle all of this and work without work getting affected. So in a way, I could sum this up as we focused more on performance and not really about the time clocked in or hours at work. Though at times I must say they both work together, but that's what we focused on. Now, in terms of work, this was again a challenge, right? I mean, from a physical space of meeting clients, walking markets, meeting consumers, etc., it was all online, right? So there were, I must say, despite this, there were a lot of new innovative solutions and new things that we tried. Some happened, and some we sort of put it on the table as learnings for a later day. So I'll just allude to one, without going directly into it. We sort of, for example, partnered our client on, our automotive client, an OEM, on a dial-up service for vehicle pickup and drop as well as retail. Now we did that because immediately post lockdown, people were very, very scared, and rightly so, to step out. And also it was like a semi lockdown, right? So a service solution like this, based on consumer behavior of, I would like to try this, or I need to have my vehicle serviced, but I don't want to step out, I don't want to go to a dealership. So this solution really addressed that, and at the same time was a new way in which we can actually bring these services to the doorstep, you know. So those are some of the things that we tried out. On the people front, again, on the team front, there were a lot of things we did for inclusivity. So, for example, Shiny, we had sessions where we got in the partners, spouses, children, whoever was in the house, because for the first time, working from home was also about the family, who was seeing you work, who was seeing you do your video calls, working on your machines, etc. And I just felt people should get a whiff and a touch of what this office was about, where your father, your mother, your daughter, whoever you are, you are so much, you spend so much of time with it. So those are some of the things which we didn't do as much of it when we physically went to work, but we really accelerated this. So include the family, include the children and everybody in a way that the whole family is inspired and motivated, to put in, to really be happy, honestly, at the end of the day, about the work culture and about the place where their family member is at work. So again, it was not about doing different things, Shiny, but it was really about doing what we always did a little differently. That's how I would sum it up.
You've always been a champion of your employees. I've always had heard you speak so passionately about them. This is wonderful to know. And on top of that, some great client innovation as well. So I think a year well spent. Nice to know this, Babita.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and Babita, if you remember, you were probably one of our first speakers on the first webinar that AdTech did once we locked down everything and we were like, let's do webinars now. So, and at that time, this was way back in March or April, and at that time, we spoke about the possibility of having to live with COVID forever. Probably, there was no vaccine and there was no picture of a vaccine, and the possibility of what we called a new normal. Uh, you remember? So now that there is a vaccine in place, things are looking slightly different. What are your thoughts? Will we go back to 2019 days? What do you think?
Um, there are so many things that you have in your mind when you talk about post-pandemic. First of all, when will it happen? And whenever it happens, what will really the world be like? Shady, forget about work, forget about our personal life. So that's where the thinking really comes from. But let me scale down my response to really work and some of the thoughts that we are actually starting to talk about and plan, especially with the vaccine in place. But before that, there's an article which my client had written a couple of weeks ago, and he had referred to a framework that HBR had come up with for post-pandemic, and I found it very interesting. So it had four quadrants. It was so the first one was boost, then catalyst, then displacement, and innovation. So I won't go into details. What it meant was, boost means something which is already happening, we accelerate it. So for example, people were already getting into e-payments, but this really accelerated it, right? Catalyst is something which is really a like a fast accelerated pace and almost a replacement of behavior, correct? So for example, say, focus on immunity foods, etc., focus on safety, etc. Displacement is something which some behaviors which replaced current behavior and looks like it will continue to be the new behavior. So here, for instance, if people were about a shared experience when it comes to, say, rented versus ownership, maybe the move catapulted by the pandemic to ownership will continue in some cases. So that means displacement, and there are many other behaviors which are that. So for example, say online education is the other one. Will it continue as a trend or as a way of education, as a way of skill upskilling, competence, even after this is over. We talked about the webinar, in fact, before this, you and we were hoping that things would come back to again the way we used to do before. But who knows? Maybe there's a lot of value and competencies and efficiencies. Maybe, we reach more people who are interested this way. So that's displacement. And the last one is innovation, and I spoke of that little example I gave that we tried out on our business. There are a lot of other innovations which have happened in product, in services, in experiences because of this. Now, when the reason why I referred to this model is sometimes we are under this illusion that every shift that is happening will be permanent. But in my opinion, I don't think it will be. There are a lot of things which it's like a tidal, it's like a wave. The water gets into the beach, but also recedes. And there are some things that are left behind on the beach and some things that are washed away. So it's a great analogy in my own mind when I think about this. I'll give you an example. During the lockdown and immediately post lockdown, including myself, a lot of us had moved and had really favored local retail, right, for our groceries, etc. And that was also because, e-commerce was not working. It was locked down. But once e-commerce opened up, there has been a shift back to e-commerce, to brands that were trusted, to brands that offered us choice, offered us ease of payment, offered us a guarantee of quality. Having said that, local retail continued to find room for a lot of us in our heads and hearts. So I think somewhere there was a sweet spot of a balance between e-commerce and local retail that's happening now that was not there before. So that's a case of, there's a shift, but the shift comes back and finds its equilibrium between what we used to do and what could be a new way of working. So some of my thoughts here are when it comes to business, for example, how do we accelerate precision marketing? How do we accelerate performance marketing? Because one thing that has been a reality is that business has been impacted. Budgets have been impacted. Resources are limited now. And that means that every rupee, every dollar that is spent needs to be accounted for and needs to show outcome. With that, how do we identify new skill sets? For example, behavior science is something which I'm very passionate about. The team is passionate about. As we speak, we are looking at what are the best ways of either onboarding new talent or looking at existing talent or collaborations that can make us get an instant grasp on shifts in behavior because of influences around us. Yeah. And this is important because, and I'll talk later about it, Shiny, if you have any question around it, which is customer journeys today, and especially the category that I work on, which is auto, are very, very rich customer journeys. From the time a prospect searches for a product, forget a brand, to him or her converting it to final consumption or final purchase, and the journey of being an owner is very, very strong today digitally. So post COVID and pandemic, how do we take these learnings and accelerate it so that it's a seamless digital process? Secondly, how do we retain some of the good alternatives that have come up? For example, will there be a healthy mix of remote working versus physical working? Now, I'll have to defer to my organization, of course, and go with what is decided, overall. But I do feel that there will be a good balance again in this case of both, because we've seen the benefits of, working, and I won't say working from home, let me put it as remote working, where you could take some time off, work from anywhere, at the same time, also have teams who are working in office. The third, what are the new collaboration partners? Because the one way of optimizing resources, of gaining competencies, is not by huge investment in yourself, but really by looking at collaboration partners. And that's really, really very critical. So for example, There's a report which my organization came up with a few days ago, which is on the future of mobility and what role can mobility play across categories. And if we thought that the only mobile brands or businesses are about cars and vehicles and delivery services, they are not. I mean, today, with e-commerce, with content, with experiences all being online, the report actually states that every business can be mobile. Every business can actually come to the consumer instead of the consumer walking to the brand. So all of these things are playing on my mind. The last one, Shiny, is I've been really grappling with what are the changes in leadership values that this pandemic brought about. And it's a piece I also read somewhere which said that there's a difference between a charismatic leader when you are physically present versus a very connected leader when you're physically not present and people can only hear you and see you online. And a connected leader has been seen to be, and I also believe it, much more impactful in keeping things going versus just, that physical charisma or presence, etc. So these are some of the things really that's been on my mind post vaccination and a COVID free world.
And you really summed it up beautifully, Babita, from seamless consumer journeys to a healthy mix of working styles to, doing more, meaningful partnerships so that, everyone kind of, creates value and the charismatic versus connected leader. Absolutely. I completely agree on the importance of having someone who understands the work process and the home process. Both of them are equally important, and I think it's important for a leader to be involved with the employees and understand what are the limitations there. So thank you for putting it together. I think it was a beautiful amalgamation of everything. Now, coming to the first point that you said about digital transformation, I think a lot of brands have realized this. In fact, we also did some amount of research, which is also showing that digital transformation and reducing dependencies on resources, in housing a lot of marketing, all this has become priority for brands. And these are there are also these tech businesses and network businesses who are then also donning agency hats, so multiple people trying to do the agency role. uh, in the face of all of this, how do you think a pure client agency relationship is evolving from the the print and the TV days where the only way you could buy that was through working with an agency? Now so many other options are there. What are the opportunities and challenges that you foresee here?
Um, it's a very good question because you're right. I mean, who are the partners on the table today, right? And there are quite a few partners on the table, and rightly so. The days where you have, and I won't say it's only client agency, even before there have been other partners, but just to draw a parallel, there have been the primary partner in most marketing setups has been the agency, right? Now, let me look at it from the lens I'm wearing, right? I'll just rephrase your question, Shiny, to say, what are the ways in which the agency can continue to be the primary partner? Yeah. Number one is about a total recast of what is the partnership about? Is it about brand building, communications, creativity, or is it about growth? And I feel there's a big shift, and a lot of agency partners who are doing very well in partnerships are about making this move from a communications partner to a growth partner. Now, what does a growth partner mean? A growth partner means you talk business, you understand business, and you have a skin in the game when it comes to business performance, right? And that's one way in which I think there's a lot of trust and confidence that is generated in the relationship. The second, these are times when structures have to be constantly evolving and fluid, versus very set structures that we were used to, some of us, in the traditional way. And in those days, it required that, right? Because the way we sort of dealt with the entire brand building process required that kind of a structure, which had various levels. It was very pyramidal, etc. Now I almost look at it as different satellites revolving around a core, right? And at any point in time, for every project, there is almost like a set of team members who bring in their competencies, get on with the project, get it done, then move back to being part of the circling core. And the more fluid the setup is, the easier it is for both the client and the agency to access competence and also to optimize resources. The third one is about upskilling and reskilling, like I mentioned before. With digital transformation, creative solutions versus creativity, understanding the importance of data, understanding how to analyze data, what do we read into that data? How do we then use what we have understood back into our business? How do we feed it in the customer journey? All of this requires a change in mindset. Yeah, it requires the understanding and the acknowledgement, first of all, that the consumer today is not in that linear process of awareness, interest, shopping, etc., that we were used to. Sometimes the consumer starts with price first. Sometimes it starts with availability first. Look at our own behaviors when we order something. We have parameters which are on delivery, we have parameters on price, we have parameters on reviews, we have parameters on other products. There's so many ways in which we sort of decide. So for the upskilling and the skill competency bit, there are two ways in which agencies again can do it and are doing it. One would be your internal reskilling and upskilling. The other is, what are the ways in which, instead of really growing your own team and in-house skilling, what are the ways in which we can again partner with the ecosystem, with people who are out there, who are ready to partner and who can bring things to the table and form these what should I say, these islands of expertise. So therefore, being a growth partner, a bedrock of trust, upskilling and reskilling, being fluid, being agile are some of the ways in which I think the agency can still continue to be the primary partner on every marketing table.
Absolutely. And who doesn't want to work with a partner with skin in the game? That really shows that you're committed to the growth that you are promising. So I think that's a really great way to think about agencies as primary partners to brands. And along the same lines, Babita, I also wanted to ask you about the D2C journey. It is, I think, the most it's the favorite word and the favorite strategy with marketers now is going D2C. And I wanted to ask you about the D2C model for high value products or luxury products, where you would typically want to go and look at something and touch it and feel it and drive it, and before you actually commit to something like that. So is that something that you're working on, the D2C model for high value products? And what are the pillars that you're building this piece on, if you are working on it?
Yes and no. So I'll speak more from knowledge rather than in-depth experience. I mean, we are making some inroads into it, but there are different issues and legalities, etc., which the category has to work out and abides by, right? But let me just speak from the knowledge that I have, and like I said, some of the work that is being done for making these little inroads. To begin with, there are two key factors: consumer confidence and readiness. Like you said, we are used to a certain way of discovery and consumption and engagement today when it comes to high value, etc., for anything, in fact. And this is therefore a shift. And how ready are we? And the other is the business confidence and readiness, right? Is the business also ready, or is it just jumping into it because, like you said, everyone is talking about D2C and the merits of D2C, right? Where A, of course, you remove aggregators, and B, it is highly, highly digital, right? In experience, in transaction, in the entire process. Now, when it comes to the consumer, I think the one thing that was also emerging pre-pandemic, but has been accelerated by the pandemic, has been the comfort with digital experiences. Yeah. Not just digital experiences, there has been a lot of influences on or via digital and via platforms, social media, entertainment, etc., where to a certain extent, there has been a democratization of the way we look at luxury, right? I'll give you an example. When there is a physical high-end luxury store, there's almost an entry barrier for a lot of people, right? Even if you have the resources, you almost hesitate to walk into the store. And that's the way the model actually works, because it is about craftsmanship, artisanship, and it is about scarcity of product. That's what defines a luxury product, right? It's for those select few. But when it comes to digital, what happens is it becomes far more accessible. Now, when I say accessible, it means you can actually go to every store online, surf through it, understand, look at what are the products. Now, you may not even buy it, but you have not only become aware of the brand, you have experienced the brand, right? Whether you convert or not. So what happens is there is a certain comfort level and a confidence that this digital and embracing digital experiences has given a consumer. And that comfort level is very, very important for high-end luxury goods, right? From, oh, that's not for me, even if I have the resources, to, yes, why don't I try that out? You know, I would like that for myself, or for the external impression, or because I really feel I'm worth it. There are different drivers of luxury goods. At the same time, there is high trust in tried and tested ways of working, in tried and tested ways in which we walk into a retail outlet, in which we are serviced in the retail outlet, in the way we look at the physical displays in the retail outlet, etc. So I think the first point of consumer confidence and readiness is quite, I won't say it's very high, but let me say it's accelerating. Coming back to my previous response on, you know, the boost and the catalyst and this. So this would definitely be a catalyst. Now, when it comes to the business, sometimes D2C means, first of all, the sensitivity to have a balance between existing channels and D2C, which means I have a set of retailers and I also want to go DTC. Now, how do I do that? Because there is this model that has garnered a lot of trust over the years, you know, so do the two coexist? Do I go direct and make a complete shift? In which case, how do I get the trust, or what do I do with the dilution that would have happened because I've removed a channel? So most luxury brands actually are doing a hybrid of both, you know, and that's a way to start. So that's the second point, balance of existing channels. The third, the D2C experience has to be more convenient and trusted than the existing channel. Otherwise, there is no reason why post-pandemic people won't go back to the behavior of the earlier method of engaging with luxury brands. And the fourth, which is the role of data. What is the way in which, you know, and especially now with privacy issues, with first party data also becoming, you know, you can't scale it up beyond the point. What is the role that data can play in ensuring that D2C is very smooth when it comes to somebody discovering you as a brand, somebody experiencing you, and somebody going on to consuming or signing up for you. So these are some of the points which are just first level thoughts, Shiny, which is, like I said, about the consumer confidence, about balancing existing channels and a new model, about the role of data, and about the business confidence itself. The really what is required is a very, very strong setup, a digital setup. And I know digital is a word which is thrown in every third sentence for everyone, but I truly mean that today D2C is about a brand or a business that has really focused, made all the required shifts to get that in place before moving on to D2C. Now, beyond this, I will not be able to share some of the stuff that may be ongoing. Maybe at a later stage, if this question is asked again in an interview for some time later, I'll speak more about it, Shiny.
Absolutely. We will come back to you at a later stage on this, Babita, maybe a couple of years, a couple of months, maybe, whenever you're ready. And uh, thank you for sharing these insights with us. So from your experience, Babita, we've seen like over the past few years, a lot of brands, have gone, even legacy brands have gone this D2C route. Uh, can you share some of the common pitfalls that you see, some of the common mistakes? Like you said, there has to be brand readiness, there has to be consumer confidence, there has to be a balance of channels. Are these also the common things that people kind of miss out on?
I think the biggest miss out would be on the experience, right? I mean, today, if there is one thing that a consumer, you and me, Shiny, if there's one thing we don't have patience for, or tolerance for, it is bad experience, right? And experience starts off from the time we are exploring, we are in that mindset to get into the category, forget the brand, to moving on to the brand, to our engagement, online engagement with various touch points, the different ways in which the brand touches us, gets us into what we want, what we need, etc. And remember, it's all digital, right? It's all happening instantly. It's all happening because there is market intel, there is business intel, there is consumer intel. That's all colliding together to give you that experience. And if that doesn't happen, you switch off, right? You go back to what you are used to. You go back to models which had aggregators as in betweens, because that gives you the trust. You go back to physical spaces that you're used to. So that, in my view, would be the biggest fallout. In setting it in place, people forget that if the compromise is on the experience, on the X, then nothing else can really make it work beyond a point.
Absolutely, completely agree on that. There is so much competition, and once you're used to a certain kind of experience, even if you've experienced it once from one brand, you kind of tend to expect that from all other brands in that category. I think that is a common thing that we've seen among all of us. And speaking of
Yeah,
the same
sorry,
thing,
Shiny, I'll just build on to one. There has been, and this is again personal, because I feel personal anecdotes also help in really, bringing things to the table. There has been a lot of, and they're not high-end luxury brands, I must admit, in my case. We are all optimizing resources, right, for during the pandemic. But there has been a lot of new brands that has entered my life and my family's life through D2C, and they have been food brands. They have been, and they're usually local. And by local, it could be India, or it could be your local market, which is where I live in, Gurgaon or Haryana, which is, so for example, there's been a yogurt brand, there's been a coffee brand, there's been brands which are into, say, baking, etc. Brands which are into local apparel. Now, two, three things. One is they're new. They've started as D2C. Okay, so there is no baggage. The other is these brands seem to have a very strong narrative as part of the experience. One is that you're local, one is the kind of ingredients used, one is the backstory about either weavers or people who have made it, etc. So the story of origin, the story of what goes into it, added to the convenience of experiencing it, added to super fast delivery, added to a very good way of consumer feedback, addressing unhappiness, dissatisfaction, also asking for reviews so that you can engage a very quick formation of communities, for example. There is a lot to learn from these new players. And I must say again, for high-end luxury goods, the process take a little bit of time only because of the resource investment, right? But personally, for me, I'm trying to take some of these learnings, back to the workplace, and some of the work that we are doing.
Fantastic. And coming back to your point, Babita, about digital kind of opening the doors of luxury, at least for the experience of it to everyone, irrespective. While I understand it is intimidating to walk into a high-end luxury store because, oh God knows, I don't know what this label really means, and then I look like such an idiot there. But anyways, so now that we see, and this has been happening for a few years now, is that the consumer journey, even for high-end brands, luxury brands, high ticket value, everything begins online. The consumer journey starts online, and there is a definite shift in the path to purchase. There are more touch points being covered online versus, initially I'd just research and then go to the store. Now I'd research and I'll do a little more. I would even, haggle over the price before going to the store. What are your thoughts on this? How should brands really gear up for this kind of a challenge where consumers want to do maximum amount of work before actually putting their foot in the store?
The category I work on, which is auto, has a very, very rich digital customer. Actually, it's an online offline customer journey because you still test drive and you buy the physical vehicle on offline, right? But it's a very, very robust online journey as well. And there's been, a Google study, and I don't remember the exact number, but I'll just quote a number to give you a sense of how strong are digital touch points. So for example, if there are 30 touch points, from the first stage of I am in the exploring stage to the final conversion stage, right? When I sign up for consuming the product, if there are 30 touch points, uh, almost 26, 25, 26 of these touch points are digital. So can you imagine how important digital is? So therefore, and I'll get a little technical first. The first thing is digital. The way we measure the impact of digital has to be very, very clear. And I'm sharing something which we did with Google. I think it was around 2 years ago, and it is also on in public media on the net. It was called O2O, online to offline attribution, where we did this sort of, we worked with a car, an aggregator partner, and then of course our own business and Google. And what we realized is that while, the click-through rates, which is the common measurement, right? If I've clicked on a banner which says fill up a form or do a test drive or whatever is your action point, you take that as a conversion and you take that as an influence, right? But what if a person has actually engaged with you, or the messaging you put out in a banner while the person was on a, for example, say a news site, right? Now the person may not have clicked on it at that point, but the influence has happened, right? Then there's been word of mouth. Then the person goes on to a brand platform, and then without actually clicking online, what we call key business action, right? Without actually engaging with that online, the person now goes to a physical retail outlet and continues the journey there. Now, that also is digital influence, right? Now, that is not directly measurable. So we call it attribution, right? So you can attribute the impact of your messaging on that person to make that person go to the offline site. So that is how closely we monitor everything that we do on the business and its impact. So for me, there are two things which are really critical here. The first is, customer journeys and the way the brand intervenes in a customer journey to navigate the person along the journey comes with deep understanding of consumer behavior. I'll give you an example, Shiny. Till a few years ago, apparently, um, the way in which people searched for a lot of categories or products were, what is the cheapest XYZ for me? Yeah. So what is the cheapest pair of shoes? What is the cheapest pair of this? Or where can I get the cheapest or the best price, etc. Okay. Today, there is a behavior change from what I have read to what is the product or what is the XYZ that is the best fit for me. So, from something which is very base level value, you're going back to a product which goes with your requirement, that understands you, that is about your personality, etc. Now, if you understand search behavior, because SEO is very, very critical, right? If you understand search behavior, you can actually help direct and navigate a lot of in market prospects onto your own brand platforms, because that is where the brand journey starts, right? It'll be your website, it'll be your social media platforms, it'll be any partner platforms, in the case of automobiles, dealer platforms, right? So that's the first thing. What is the search strategy that we have which is very strongly related to consumer behavior? The other is, we cannot forget the power of storytelling. Finally, it is about a very compelling narrative, you know. And I sometimes worry when, with all talk about digital and journeys and precision marketing, is storytelling taking a backseat? Because if it does, we are discounting something that has worked for thousands of years on creating influence, you know, the X factor, the magic that works with the logic. So the second point really is storytelling, meeting performance, marketing, meeting conversion, right? So you sort of, how do you create these influences? How do you create that influence on search? What do people see when they're searching for you? That is where that storytelling comes in. Now, storytelling doesn't mean, of course, a TV script. You can tell a story in 2 lines. You can tell a story in 3 words, and that's what it means. Storytelling really means, what is that one story that will remain etched in the consumer's mind and heart? You know, the age old definition. And the third is the power of sharp-shooted, targeted messaging. You know, I'm using a term which, again, a lot of people use, which is personalization at scale, customization at scale. But really, today we can build audience cohorts in a way that we can shape clusters of messaging based on passion points, interest, engagement. So, for example, in our category, supposing we are talking to people who are into SUVs, right? Now, we'll also have cohorts of people who are interested in SUVs, who are also into sports, who are also about family values. Yeah. Or there could be, interest in SUVs, into women, into professionals, into interested in XYZ. So the way you build audiences have to be very sharp, because then your messaging becomes sharp shooting, but at scale. So these are some of the ways in which we approach customer journeys. I could go on and on because this is my own passion point, but again, we leave this for another day, Shiny.
And one of the most important things on customer journeys and consumer behavior that is kind of that continues to baffle brands is Gen Z. If I can, this generation which is, just brought up so very differently from, drastically differently from what previous generations have looked like. And, and their attitudes towards buying and their attitudes towards spending, uh, like you said, buying versus renting, and the shift that has happened in that space. Similarly, on uh, minimalism as a as a trend. This is a generation that values all of these things. Uh, what when it comes to high value purchases, how have their attitudes kind of shifted, or have they changed at all? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, Currently, the business I work on, we don't, because of the portfolio mix, we don't necessarily focus on Gen Z. It's actually a step after that. It's more millennials and beyond. But increasingly, of course, like every business, you cannot ignore Gen Z because they are your future prospects, right? I'll speak again a lot from knowledge and on some other categories that I used to be a part of earlier. Now, Gen Z, it is said, has been the most impacted when it comes to the pandemic for many reasons, right? If I divide Gen Z into the older Gen Zs and the younger Gen Zs, and I've read about this somewhere recently, the older Gen Zs would be around, say, 23 years of age, what we would call first jobbers, right? Now, unfortunately, the job market has crashed. And here you have this whole generation who are just about to make that plunge, and suddenly they are facing this whole crisis of employment, right? And this employment also is a stress on financial resources because some of them would have taken loans for education, some of them would have moved out of homes and they're moving back in, etc., etc. So that's the first jobber impact. The other is the younger generation. Oh, sorry, on the first jobber, mobility was a very important thing or is a very important thing for Gen Z, which is I move out of my hometown, I move to maybe other cities or other workplaces, right? So relocating for work. And that again has come to a stop because of restrictions of travel or availing of opportunities which are not at home but which are there in another market. Now, when it comes to the younger Gen Zs, they are the younger ones who are, they were just getting into that age of social engagement, meeting new friends, getting into different interests, belonging to different communities, really exploring social engagement. And all of that has now got clamped down into only online, right? So you've not met with any people, with friends, with people who would have been potentially new friends, etc., or people you would have engaged with. It's only online. And the behavior for online is you are closer with your immediate friends rather than making new friends, who we have not seen. That's really like, I look at my daughter, she's 15, and when I ask her who are the people you engage with online, who are your friends, and she has 5 or 6 out of the whole class, and she actually says, while we talk once in a while when the teacher sort of encourages them to get together, but really it's a very small inner circle. So what has happened is, therefore, there has been a restriction in this social engagement for the younger Gen Z. So all of this put together, there are 2, 3 things, actually 3, that I would like to point out. It impacts their engagement with high value, but it also impacts their overall attitude towards work and life. One is extremely value conscious, and extremely value conscious for the reasons that I mentioned. The older ones have realized the importance of till there is a steady stream of income or earning, you have to, so on one hand there is this whole desire for consumption, for experiences, but on the other, that prudence of, let me scale down and let me sort of really go in for those few experiences or consumption that really is meaningful for me. So value consciousness is, to a great extent, influenced by purpose. What does that brand, how does that brand impact my life? And a lot of brands, as we know now, and it relates to the narrative I was talking earlier about storytelling. What does the brand stand for? What is the role the brand plays when it comes to people, planet, profit, the trilogy? All of that really influences Gen Z, who's very conscious environmentally, politically, socially, culturally. The second thing is this whole entrepreneurship. It's a step before startup. It's a step before going in for venture capital or huge funds investment. It is this dabbling into or making inroads into if I don't have the options which are open for me now, what can I do immediately? So Gen Z is not really about waiting to watch things happen. They are about making things happen, you know. And to make that happen, there are these green shoots of homegrown entrepreneurships. It could be something that you've started off with a few friends when it comes to maybe a home service, a new app that has been developed, a new kind of what do you call it, a service which has been developed. And we see a lot of that now. Now some of it I know will die down the minute there are other opportunities which would have been the actual plan or ambition for Gen Z. But till then, we have this whole, it's almost like an innovation lab which is happening across the world with young people. And the good thing is, digital, they are so connected digitally that they can share ideas. There are platforms where they can experience, platforms where they can put out their ideas, etc. The third is a lot of what I'm seeing, this high sense of activism, and it's frontline activism as well. In the absence of going out on roads, it is digital activism, but this raising your voice and speaking out for what you believe in and what you don't believe in is on a high. So if there is a sense of distrust, or if there is a sense of a brand or a business or any institution for that matter that is working against what Gen Z really values as culture, as future, as planet, they are the first ones. And you know that. We've seen music videos, we've seen cohorts of young people speak out, we've seen forums, we've seen very, very young, bright speakers, or I don't want to, while I'm talking activism, but I don't want to label them as activists. They are really people, a generation who wants to make things happen and who wants to make us aware of the fact that they want a world where things are fair, things are greener, things are healthier, and things are about shared growth and a better future together. That's really what I have seen when it comes to Gen Z.
Beautiful, Babita. I think all generations see a recession happen. I think it happened for us, it happened for the generation before us. But the way this generation has, I would say, embraced the opportunities that this recession has brought is wonderful. And thank you for summing it up so well for us. And so that was on Gen Z. Now coming back to brands again, and we spoke about this briefly when we spoke about data, and there is so much of now privacy as legal issues coming up there. There is the threat of cookieless browsers, and the triopoly kind of saying that we're going to keep all the cookies to ourselves and the rest can't have them. So, and like you said, first party data is definitely limited in terms of scale. We saw some innovation. For example, we saw the Diwali ad from Mondelez, which was entirely based on first party data, but difficult to put that kind of data together. What are the alternates that marketers can explore? If we can't really put together that kind of first party data, what else can we do? Can marketers do really?
I also feel, Shiny, and it's a related observation, that sometimes, and it's a little bit personal here, okay? I feel this whole data and the quantum of data versus quality of data has been this mad scramble and race that a lot of marketers have been after, which is how much of data rather than how rich the data. And if you are chasing how much, I'm afraid that there'll be very few alternatives which can give us as much as what a lot of businesses are used to today. Correct? Because the trio that you pointed out rightly, I mean, they're masters of data, right? They're masters. And it's very difficult for a brand or a business to sort of chase that level of scale without any collaboration or without any second or third party. The point I would like to make is, now if we just go back to a time when we didn't have digital and data as we know today, but data has always existed in some form right from the time the first profession started in the world, right? So if I talk about a very familiar shoe brand that all of us, most of us grew up with, we would walk into the shoe store and the manager would greet us by first name, ask us about when is your exam, beta, what size of shoes, okay, this has come. I don't even remember, sometimes maybe my parents had a line of credit and they paid later, it would be written in a register, and sometimes they paid. My dad and the manager would get into conversations of weather and cricket and town and what was happening, and we would walk up, right? Now that is what is very rich customer engagement, basis the information that that store manager has on his, I'm saying his because that manager was he, on the set of consumers or customers that were frequenting. And even when you can argue that that was perhaps the only shoe brand at that time, but even when there were other alternatives, let me tell you, till very recently and even now, I am very, very loyal to that because I have such strong memories of that connect. So I come back to, I think the one realization should be, what are we chasing? What data are we chasing? Now, coming back to our case again, and I'll talk about it very broadly, of course, but it is about how do we optimize our own brand platforms? Yeah. I mentioned this before, but I'll recap. A brand platform would start with your own website, then your own social media handles, whatever you own digitally, right? Whatever you run digitally. Now, how do you optimize these platforms? You have to work out a strategy of getting people onto these platforms, first of all, and then having such a compelling experience and a very, very convenient process of meeting the person's requirement. So, for example, unfortunately, I have to get a little technical at times, but most of the web pages that are designed by us, for example, not most, the entire strategy is about dynamic pages. What does that mean? That means if I have come onto your platform and I have searched for XYZ, say, I'm just making it up, say fuel efficient cars. Now, next time when I come back, what do I see? Now, do I again go back to, I am here and this is what I'm about as a brand? Or do I pick up from what next after fuel efficiency? What do people who seek fuel efficiency also seek for that we can offer? And that is what the dynamic strategy allows you to do, right? So optimizing experiences and the process of conversion on your own platforms will really optimize it. And finally, the ratio of conversion vis-a-vis just the quantum of data will determine your business, right? So that's one. Number two, when it comes to attracting, how do you attract prospects to you as a brand if you're not buying data, right? It really means, so I call it attract versus aggregate. At the end of the day, I'm an advertising girl, so I can't help matching up words. So aggregation is you're just relying on other parties to get you the data. Attraction means you have to do rigor and hard work. And it is a true test of marketing. It is again coming back to, if I didn't have any data, how do I get people to hear me? How do I break out of the clutter? And how do I say such a relevant story and messaging that people find me relevant enough to come to me? Correct? So this again, the messaging of the brand, the positioning, how relevant are we? How much we understand the consumer? And I'm repeating this consumer because to me, if you have people and consumers at the heart of what you do, if you're interested in going out and doing the hard work of talking to 10 consumers every day, pandemic doesn't mean you can't talk to consumers, right? You just need to pick up the phone, talk to people's friends, talk to friends of friends of friends, have general conversations. When I started off work first, I was very lucky to work partner client who actually evaluated the agency on the number of hours that was spent with consumers. And I feel that is the rigor which has been instilled in us. So it's not about a data point which is on an Excel sheet. And of course, I'm not belittling data. Please don't get me wrong. Data today is very rich if you know how to analyze it. But there is nothing that replaces the conversations, the connects that you can have that give you insights on people. I still remember in those days, I was working on a hair brand, and who did we talk to when it came to women and, beauty? We talk to gynecologists because women are very close to women gynecologists, right? We talk to what do you call it, college professors, because that's an age where professors really understand behavior when it comes to students and their engagement with external looks. How do they identify themselves with beauty, etc. We even identified priests, and without getting into religion, we know that religion plays an important role in some of our audience cohort. So just talking to, what is the role of beauty and hair when it comes to really, that moment of when you are at one with yourself, what are some of the observations? And I can't tell you, if I tell you these three as some of the people we met, you'll wonder what has that got to do. But that is the power of really getting rich insights. So attract versus aggregate only means today with digital you can really get so much information by figuring out who do I need to talk to. So again, not to blindly jump into, I've talked to 100 consumers today, but who are the three people who are related to my consumers in their ecosystem that can give me the most information about, not information, insights about the consumer. And the third thing is, and the last thing actually, because I had 3 points on this, was about doing a few things and doing them well. I think with this flurry of data, if you have that many data points in you, you feel compelled to act on that data. Correct? That's human nature. First of all, you've invested in it. Data doesn't come free. You've bought it. If you've bought it, you may as well do something with it. And today it is really about, and again, pandemic related, where really the one thing that the pandemic, out of the many things it has shown us, has been the way in which you can really look at efficiencies in a system. And we did it by force. It's like in our homes, right? We manage budgets during a lockdown. So in the same way, I think it is about what are the few things we can really do with our strong database that we own that can lead to conversions and very loyal owners who can ultimately become your brand advocates. And that could be one way of business growth in the absence of depending on, other second and third party data.
Absolutely. So I think, sum it up, it's not data that's going to help you make that sale. It's the emotion that's going to help you make that scale. Data can help you drive that emotion, but
Yes.
at the end of the day, purchases are emotional, not data based.
Yes. I mean, Shiny, I wish there were more conversations on what do we do once we have the data rather than conversations on, oh my God, where will we
Or
get
data.
data now that this data is not there? You know what? I think there's this fixation of getting in more, and it happens. I mean, all of us, I've been part of it myself, the concerns about, oh, what happens if I don't have access to that is to a certain extent our own doing.
Yep.
So
FOMO
yeah,
is
let's
very
wait
much
and see.
part of the ecosystem. FOMO is very much part of the ecosystem, especially when it comes to digital. We're just used to having more inventory, more data, and more of everything that we can really use. And I think time to optimize. I think 2020 showed us that we can do a lot more optimization within our campaigns, within our homes, within our lives. And you know, last or second last question actually. What according to you should based on what the changes that have come across in terms of consumer sentiment and understanding from 2020, that is we saw the rise of the empathetic marketer, as I'd like to call it, Fewer people were doing precision targeting, geolocation targeting, because I was standing outside a burger joint and said that go eat a burger right now because you're standing there. Fewer people did that. I don't say it went away completely, but for the coming years, as a marketer, what should be my focus areas? How should I, kind of think about planning for my brand in the coming years? What consumer big changes that I should keep in mind? What should they be?
You're right. I mean, empathy is at the heart of most businesses, and we've seen it. And it's been related to where GenZ is going as consumers, where businesses are headed in terms of the ecosystem of people, planet, profitability. So, no going away from the fact that if you don't have the consumer at square center, people centric, human centric, then it is very difficult to move a business. So, I think for all marketers, the first would be, in fact, I would sort of say it's people, people, people in everything. Now, that really means what are the processes? Because today, consumer behavior is a science. We call it behavior science, we call it behavior economics. Remember, they are not just arts. They are not just about, okay, I understand what this is happening, And one of the things that I myself am doing are, there are so many very, very good courses that you can do online now on consumer behavior, like I said, economics, science of it. Because if you understand that, the science of it connects that behavior into very, very measurable, actionable points, because otherwise they remain as emotions. It's not helpful for a business to understand emotions without realizing how you can act on these emotions to translate into business, right? So I think, how do we sort of make the entire marketing team and the partners be very, very robust and competent when it comes to understanding and analyzing consumer behavior? Like I said, as a science is important. The second one, which is related to empathy. The second thing is, Shiny, there is a lot of insecurity today in the entire overall the industry ecosystem, right? And you yourself asked me this question earlier: who are the partners at the table today? And really today, there are so many partners, there are so many fragmented team members who are sitting there, right? Now, what happens is, finally, if everybody around the table are not aligned in thinking about doing what's right for the brand and the business, you can have 25 partners on the table. You may think that it's very efficient, but actually you are only dissipating energy and resources, and maybe duplicating resources and duplicating solutions. So it is up to the CMO or the marketing, really the senior leadership there, to make every partner on the table feel very confident about what they bring to the table and what they're remunerated for it. If at the end of the day, I feel sharing of ideas and collaborating will impact my own earnings, beyond the point, it is very difficult to have true collaboration. And I think some of the best marketers that we are familiar with are also great partners for agencies, for consultants, you name it. And they are the ones who are always encouraging you. They are very aggressive, they are very firm, but they're also very, very loved. And there's a reason why they are loved, right? When you walk into the room feeling like a partner rather than maybe just somebody at the table, you put in 110% on the table for that business, right? So that's the second point, which in today's world, it is very important. So it's almost like you are the sutradhar as the marketing person, managing that entire show around you in a way that everybody performs to the best. And the third is, I mentioned this before, and I'm repeating this. If the key questions on the table are on business growth and not on brand growth alone, I think the solutions will be far more measurable and far more impactful for the business, because a lot of conversations were earlier on the brand, right? On communications. But if we move back to how is it going to impact growth? How is it going to, what are, if we have growth square center? So if on one hand it is people, I think on the other hand it is business growth. I think with these two, I mean, any partnership or any marketing leader will have challenges, but will have the arsenal to also overcome these challenges.
Wonderful. I think I really like that analogy of, balancing the people square center and the brand and the growth parameter square center. I think that's what we really need in 2021 to kind of come out of this entire haze of 2020, I would call it, right? Thank you so much. I think this has been super insightful. But last question, and I can't resist asking this, is that you've been, I've heard you speak so passionately about women and the workplace, and you've been a wonderful mentor to so many women. And I believe WPP has a new program called Stella around women in the workplace. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's not very new. We launched the India chapter. In fact, it was out in industry media in December. And it's led by WPP India's culture officer, Apurva Bapna. And we have a set of senior mentors and, a set of participants. So participants is a wrong word. So really, WPP Stella is a network of current and future women leaders who are sharing and learning for each other's experiences and really accelerating the leadership journey. That's the best way to define it. I'm very proud to be part of the program. I'm very happy that a lot of young women are getting this opportunity to engage, to learn, and to have that confidence, because in our growing up years, we didn't have much of these programs. We were pretty much left to ourselves to grapple our way through. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, there's as we go through the year, we do have programs, initiatives lined up, which you'll be able to sort of read, access, etc. But personally, because you sort of spoke about mentoring, I must end by saying it is something which is very close to my heart, because I do feel, given everything else remaining the same on meritocracy, on competencies, on skill, I feel that women do have a broken ladder to climb. There are still societal pressures, there are still pressures of home, there are still the pressures we ourselves have as demons inside us on the various roles we need to excel in. That, if we don't have people in the industry, women in the industry who've overcome this, share their experiences very honestly, good experiences as well as bad experiences, we will be doing a disservice to a lot of young women out there who are just waiting to jump onto the journey, but who may have some misgivings. So to me, for women who want to work, there should be no plan B. This should be the only plan that is on the table.
Absolutely. Plan A and the only plan that there is on the table. Wonderful. I think that's a beautiful thought to end this conversation with. Thank you so much, Babita. This was such a pleasure having you on the Leadership Lens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shiny. You know how much I love you and I love talking with you. So thank you very much for doing this for us and for the industry. It's not been easy on you. Thank you.